Versatile are a North Dublin hip-hop duo built up of two Dubliners known as Casper Walsh and Eskimo Supreme. They are a festival bill everyone wants to see this summer in Ireland, who have been featured in New York Times articles featuring discussions on the revival of the hip-hop scene. With an edgy style to their hip-hop, which harkens back to the days of Eminem and the West Coast gangster rap scene, they rap about drugs and everything scaldy in between, and have recently rose to prominence with their Ketamine release. This hard edge that they present can also be paired with a quality of satire and absurdism that is reminiscent of another great Irish hip-hop duo, the Rubber Bandits. They're in a band the Irish music scene can be proud of, and ones to watch for even bigger stages in the coming year. As we will see, their latest video, Ketamine, is an exploration of mental health and the dangers of the growingly popular drug-taking culture that is starting to pervade in Ireland. Without further ado, let's dive into the genius that is Versatile's Ketamine. The video opens with Casper sitting in an Eddie Rockets while looking regretful about the night before. He also looks extremely paranoid about the world around him, obviously a central theme of the song. Instantly, the watcher is brought into this strange feeling of relatability. Anyone who has had a bender has sat across from the person, going about their everyday business, but to the hungover mind, they look demonic and really scary. Next we get one of the standout images of the video, the other half of Versatile, Eskimo Supreme, snorting an insurmountable pile of ketamine. This imagery is so aggressive, it can only really be perceived as ridiculous by the viewer. As I will argue later on, I think this is the whole angle they are going for. This is then followed by a GQ type photo shoot, where Eskimo sits with an air of authority and cool. I think here they are showing the association some people have about drugs. Cool people do drugs, and drugs make you a cool person. We then overlook an after-party session, which resembles a ritualistic attempt at proving manhood through violently snorting absurd amounts of drugs. The normie, quote-unquote, talking about his brother being in the RA or the IRA, is the cub in the proverbial pack of hyenas. When he is gagged and bound, he comes to represent us, the casual viewer invading this toxic space. In Ketamine, we're invading the paranoid thoughts of someone living in hell by watching this, and therefore we feel just as gagged and bound, wanting to look away, but forced to watch on. We then see the first fantasy sequence, a drunken, gin-fueled fling with a nun. I find it interesting that it's back in a studio setting. So does this mean the GQ photo shoot at the start was a fantasy as well? Is Eskimo's view of himself a fantasy too? Note as well as the characters move throughout the video, they get more feral, more animalistic as the chaos progresses. This represents the escape back to the primal male, the caveman, the withdrawal from the real world. We then enter the murder fantasy of Casper Walsh, probably one of the harder scenes to watch, but this is not violence for its own sake in the video. The song, remember, is about escapism. While Eskimo retreats into sexual fantasy, Bombay Sapphire and nuns, Casper retreats into the realm of violence. Both are polar extremes of fantasy, and you could argue they are male fantasies too, and they are power fantasies. For me, the whole point of the video converges at the refrain. Get a half ounce of the schnocta and burn that roach off the lips. And schnocta means snow, which obviously means cocaine as well. The drug-fueled rampage has reached such an absurd peak that blood comes out of one of the party revelers' lips. They are egging on their own self-destruction at this point, and any sort of concept of fun with these drugs has vanished. To me, this really gets at the macho egging on you would hear at parties to take drugs. It's an almost aggressive approach to taking drugs, and it's not uncommon to see at house parties that are mostly dominated by men. After this, the video reaches an even further peak of absurdity, with a visual metaphor of the duo climbing a literal mountain of snow. The struggle involved clearly pairs this with some of the greater heroic periods of exploration, perhaps a direct nod to Tom Crean himself, an Irishman who crossed the Arctic ice shelf back in the 1900s. The parallels they try to draw here are as follows. Modern drug users are the new explorers, but explorers of an inner space. Perhaps they try to paint themselves as heroes themselves. They jab very subtly at a culture that raises drug taking onto a pedestal it might not even deserve. They also hint at the past and the present, how each new decade has a drug of choice and wants to outdo the past. In the end, I think the video suggests there is no heroic glory in the duo's violent drug-fueled pursuit for escape and fantasy. Even Eskimo's warped fantasy with his dream lover turns into horror when a pig-headed woman reminiscent of something from The Shining materializes. Even the fantasy is warped, suggesting even the escape for these lads is nothing more than an illusion. They still drag the real world into their fantasies. For example, in Eskimo's vision, we get a glimpse of the horrors visited in Ireland by the Catholic Church. Perhaps the video shows us that there may be no safe ground at all for young people in this world. The older generation, moving on, bore us. The current generation pursue self-gratification and narcissism with reckless abandon. So the humble pursuit to get high is a perilous journey, one that should be carefully considered. I think that is the central message of this video. Drugs don't make you cool, and drugs in themselves aren't inherently cool. We're a culture seeking exploration of the inner world in modern Ireland, perhaps escape from the outer too. The struggles here are just as heroic, but the outcome is death, minor temporary escape from reality, or desolation.